For those of you who came from part one, welcome back. You already know that this isn't just content, it's something deeper we're naming together. And for those of you landing here first, let me say this clearly. This is part two, a conversation that began with the soul ache, the kind of quiet unraveling that shows up when your life no longer fits, but you've been too conditioned to question it. In part one, we named what most people mislabel as burnout or resistance or low vibration. We peeled back the personal and exposed the pattern, systems of family and culture and survival that taught us to shrink and call it strength. If your nervous system is already resonating with this, trust that going back won't interrupt your process. It will only deepen it. All right, now on to Ancestral ache. Because the ache didn't start with you, but it lives in you until someone is brave enough to name it. When Maria's daughter asked, "Why do I have to go somewhere every day that makes me feel small?" I heard different variations. I'm sure Maria did too. Like, I'm shrinking just to fit inside their rules. I don't think I was made for this. All of us have heard that echo at different times in life. She wasn't questioning school. She was remembering something older. Her words weren't rebellion. They were revelation. That ache, it's not always pain. Sometimes it's memory surfacing of what was lost, of who you were before you started shrinking to fit into their version of life. Maria's daughter didn't feel trapped by a building. She was waking up inside a lineage that had forgotten itself. Because Maria learned to shrink, and she learned from her mother, who learned to shrink. Keep going throughout the lineage. Each woman has labels they patched over the shrinkage, calling it love, calling it duty, calling it tradition, but what they were really doing was surviving. So if the ache feels bigger than you, it probably is. It's a signal, a remembering that something passed down to you ends with you. Now let's go ahead and actually name these systems. Because by the time the ache surfaces, it's rarely just one thing. It's not just the job or just the relationship or just the fatigue. Let me take a tiny rabbit trail here on that word fatigue. Because isn't it something how language has softened that we call outright mental, emotional, and spiritual assaults fatigue? I want you to know that this intentional dilution is what continues to point fingers at you, saying that you are not enough to handle things that are systematically set against you. This is all the more reason to understand that the whole system has one objective, and it is to keep you ignorant of your sovereignty, so that you never remember that you are divine. Okay, let's get back on track. Because by the time the ache surfaces, it's rarely just one thing. It's the accumulation. And the systems we've inherited from government to capitalism to religion to family have trained us to treat that ache like a glitch in us instead of realizing the break is in them, not you. Capitalism says, you're not productive enough to deserve rest. Religion says, your suffering is sacred. Family says, don't ruin the fantasy. So instead of questioning the systems, we question ourselves. We don't investigate the ache, we internalize it. We say things like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be happy? Why can't I get it together like everyone else? As if everyone else has it together. And that is the misdiagnosis. You are not the problem. You are the witness. And being a witness means sitting on the throne of your sovereignty. And that takes courage. Because when you stop trying to fix yourself and start listening to what your ache is trying to expose, the whole framework starts to crack. And here comes the ripple effects. The ache doesn't always scream. Sometimes it hums quietly under the surface until your life starts to shape itself around it, Let me tell you what I mean. You build relationships that match it. You say yes to jobs, routines, and roles that numb it. You call it ambition, loyalty, strength, but really, it's just survival dressed up in purpose. And what you don't face, you pass down, not because you meant to, but because you didn't know how not to. And so you hear it in your kids. You see it in the way they push back, pull away, or flat out refuse to participate. You think they're rebelling. You wonder what you did wrong, when maybe what you're calling rebellion is actually remembrance. You were too loyal to question. Maybe what feels like everything unraveling is actually a system falling apart so something real can finally emerge. After this, you can no longer slap labels on them because none of them are broken, and neither are you. You're just feeling the ache that was never meant to be carried this long. It didn't start with you, but it can stop with you. This is how we begin to remember, by telling the truth, listening to the whispers, and refusing to keep quiet just because it's what's always been done. Look around you, because it is the culmination of what has always been done. The ache you feel is sacred, and following it home, that's how we return to ourselves, to who we were before being programmed by the systems. Now let me talk to you about something you may or may not have heard of: sovereign agency. It's that moment when the ache finally breaks through. It's not a breakdown. It's not dysfunction. It's your sovereignty remembering itself. You're not malfunctioning. You're remembering. But if you don't know that, if no one ever gave you enough foundation to give you a different perspective, you'll call it a crisis, a failure, a collapse, or worse, an acceptable psychological label. So they want you to turn inward like a locust against itself and violently label yourself, because labels come with a stench that often lasts a lifetime, when really, that break is the first honest thing that's happened in a long time. And no, you don't need to heal before you act. You don't need a retreat or a moon cycle or a perfect morning routine. You just need to stop handing your truth to people who told you to ignore the ache in the first place. Come close, because so much of the new age stuff has us spinning our wheels and keeping us in traps. I want you to hear this. Healing is not a performance. It's not a path to earn your way back to work. Healing is what happens when you stop pretending, when you give yourself permission to remember. And remembering is the healing. And it doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, clear, and immediate. Like the influencer who walked away from millions of followers, not because she failed, but because she remembered. She was never supposed to be performing in the first place, but she got caught up in the system. Or the lawyer who walked away after realizing the U.S. is a corporation. He was indoctrinated to defend the illusion until he finally saw the machinery behind it. There may be some lawyers who are hearing that for the first time. Listen, y'all, if it's education, it's indoctrination. Somebody decided what the facts were based on their agendas. Moving right along. So there's the mom who let her kids stay home from school. Not for a vacation, but because her child's soul didn't fit inside the system. A system that was built to shrink them. None of these examples I just gave are of people who waited for permission. They didn't raise their frequency or cleanse their aura. They just stopped outsourcing their truth. They remembered their own authority, and everything changed. And that's all it takes. When you change one thing, things around you have to change. If you know what that's like, I'll meet you in the comment section. You do not need permission. You don't need to fix yourself. You don't need to be more healed or more spiritual or more ready. You just need to stop pretending that numb is normal. Because what you've been calling burnout might just be your soul begging you to stop performing and start remembering. Remembering what? That you are not here to shrink, not here to smile through systems that make you ache, not here to pass down silent suffering like it's a family heirloom. The ache is not the problem. The ache is the pause. The ache is the pattern interrupt. The ache is the hand on your shoulder whispering, look again. And when you do, you might see what Maria saw, that her daughter's ache was the same one she'd buried. That silence gets inherited if we don't speak. And that a cage doesn't stop being a cage just because we decorate it. You might realize, like so many of us have, that what you've called ambition was actually avoidance. That what you called loyalty was just fear camouflaged. That what you called strength was just your ache dressed up in overachieving. Some of us weren't achieving all that much more, just over functioning. You might start to name the systems, the ones that told your grandmother to keep quiet, your mother to be grateful, and you to just push through. You might feel the ache not just in your body, but in your relationships, in the work you do, in the places that used to feel like home. And in that moment, when everything feels like it's unraveling, maybe it's not unraveling at all. Maybe what looks like rebellion is actually a return. Maybe what you thought was estrangement is someone finally refusing to carry what isn't theirs. Maybe this ache is the beginning of a remembering that didn't start with you, but can end with you. So when the ache speaks again, because it will, don't shame it. Don't bypass it with buzzwords and rituals. Don't spiritualize it. Just listen. Let it tell the truth. And when it does, don't ask, what's wrong with me? Ask, what am I remembering? Because the moment you do, you stop surviving and you start returning. And when enough of us remember, the system has no choice but to forget who and what it taught us to be. Your soul is now rumbling louder than your circumstances. Why? Because the world doesn't change from the top down. It changes when enough people remember who they are. This isn't about your thoughts or your beliefs. It's about your authority. And when you sit on the throne of your sovereignty and stop outsourcing your power, the world around you begins to shift. Because the system cannot survive your remembering. I hope you got that, because as you lean more into remembering your divine birthrights and living them out, not the programmed stuff you've been surviving, the system will loosen its grip on you. It has to. This is Remembering with Zara.